Welcome to the Friday panel series of the International Writing Program's 2024 Fall Residency. For those of you who are new to our programming, we've given our writers a topic to consider and present to you today. To learn about this year's cohort, visit iwp.uiowa.edu, where you can find biographies and writing samples from our writers and a schedule of our upcoming events. The writers are on a lot of panels tomorrow. You can also find this information by scanning the QR code on the bookmarks available at the back of the room. There is also pizza graciously provided by International Programs. And now for today's panel, Balancing Life as an Artist. These essays will explore what it means to balance life and art. Can a writer remain true to their artistic self while making a living writing? What does work-life balance look like to a writer? How do you stay true to yourself and your beliefs when writing? Our format for every panel is the same. I'll introduce the writers going down the list. They'll each give a brief presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions. Ikram will be wandering around with a microphone. Please don't begin asking your question until he reaches you with that microphone, because we want to be sure that the audience watching on YouTube can hear you as well as those in the room. Please speak slowly and loudly to ensure that this presentation is accessible. Immediately to my left is Lisa Allen-Agostini, fiction writer, poet, and editor from Trinidad and Tobago. She's the author of the historical noir novella Death in the Dry River, the young adult novel Home, Home, and the domestic noir novel The Bread the Devil Knead, which was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2022. She is currently working on a memoir in poetry and a novel set in the world of steelpan, which is the national instrument of her homeland, and her participation in the Fall Residency was made possible by the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. Seated next to her is Putra Hidayatullah, a nonfiction and fiction writer, art curator, and educator from Indonesia. He's the author of a short story collection entitled The Butcher's Garden. His nonfiction writing has appeared in ArtLink, Curatography, the Jakarta Post, and Check-In, while his fiction has been published in Intersastra, Porch Lit Mag, and Quran Tempo, among others. He served as a harvester for the International Art Exhibition Documenta 15 in Germany, and he is currently writing a novel. His participation was also made possible by the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. Seated next to Putra is Melanie Werder Aviles, a playwright, theater maker, scholar from Spain. She's the author of the plays Sharenting, Nutella Days, Dirt Cheap, among others. Her play, La Protagonista, won the Lope de Vega Award. She's been selected as a resident playwright of the Spanish National Drama Center and has been a member of the International Summer Workshop at the Sala Beckett. She's been awarded the Carlota Sol de Vita Fellowship by the Teatre Libre of Barcelona and is a member of the SGAE Playwriting Laboratory and the ETC of Contemporary Creation in Madrid, among others. She is currently researching documentary theater practices as a pre-doctoral fellow, and her participation in the Fall Residency was made possible by the Cultural Office of the Embassy of Spain in Washington, D.C., and supplemental monies from the IWP. Seated next to her is Daryl Lee, a nonfiction and fiction writer from Singapore, the author of two collections of creative nonfiction, The Inventors and Tenderly, Tenderly, as well as a forthcoming short story collection, Minor Illusions. He was a finalist for the Georgia Review Prose Prize, and his work has been long-listed for both the Australian Book Review's Caliber Essay Prize and the same publication's Elizabeth Jolly Short Story Prize. In 2013, he received a Golden Point Award for a short story in the English category. He is currently at work on a full-length nonfiction project as well as an essay collection. His participation in the Fall Residency is funded by the National Arts Council in Singapore. Finally, the 2024 IWP Ida Cordelia Beam visiting Professor Jennifer Croft won a 2022 Guggenheim Fellowship for her novel, The Extinction of Irina Ray, which also won the 2020 William Saroyan International Prize for Writing. She also won, I should say she's going to read from The Extinction of Irina Ray at Prairie Lights tomorrow morning at 10:30, right? Yeah, 10:30. And she won the 2020 William Saroyan International Prize for Writing for her illustrated memoir, Homesick, and the 2018 International Booker Prize for her translation from Polish of Nobel laureate Olga Tokarczuk's Flights. She's also a translator of Federico Falco's A Perfect Cemetery, Romina Paola's August, Pedro Marai's The Woman from Uruguay, and Olga Tokarczuk's The Books of Jacob, a finalist for the Kirkus Prize. In 2023, she received an American Academy of Arts and Letters Award in Literature. She lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with her husband and twins. Lisa, to you.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Chris, for that introduction, and thank you to everyone for being here. On Instagram, I follow the Trinidadian UK poet Roger Robinson, who recently shared this provocative post. Stretch your genre, make poems like short films, make films like paintings, make paintings like photography, shoot photos like novels. In responding to his prompt on last week's ICPL library, the IWP fellow from Japan, Kei Okamoto, used a visual poem which was both breathtakingly beautiful and pointedly political. Today's panel topic, as you just heard, is balancing life as an artist. The prompt called for essays that would explore what it means to balance life and art. It asked, can a writer remain true to their artistic self while making a living writing? What does work-life balance look like to a writer? How do you stay true to yourself and your beliefs when writing? The following work is called hard scrabble, a word which dictionary.com defines as providing or yielding meagerly in return for much effort, demanding or unrewarding. The title simultaneously puns on the crossword board game Scrabble, on which the poem relies. While I'm neither as poetically gifted as Kay nor as technically proficient as Roger's advice might require, I was inspired by each of them to make this work instead of writing an essay. It is rough, you may see my socks, but at the very least, I hope it answers the prompt. My thanks to the ICPL teen librarian, Victoria Fernandez, for her assistance in making the video.
Start with talent, of little value, but it earns extra as an opening word. Poet, in the right spot, is worth very little. Poetry, if you can make it, scores higher. Fiction scores well, could ensure your win if placed in the right spot. Home is worth almost nothing. You can make poor on top of it, using poetry in both. You make homed and hard in a single turn. You've run out of some letters now. This is your game. You made it what it is. Elsewhere, you could have formed fame and rich. Though not breath or time. Economy with luck and graft could yield a good amount, but I did say you needed luck and graft. Try making screen of economy for double points. Screen opens up the board too. Instead of hard, homed, play teaching. It earns a bonus, though it uses all your tiles. But who knows what you'll pull next? Link might be an option. Maybe kids, depending on who you play with. You can't make travel, prizes, publishers, or reviews with what you have in hand. Alas, those are the tiles you drew, and this is the game you've played. Your last word at the top. Right. Let me know if you win or lose.
Can you hear me? Okay. Honestly, it's really an honor to be here. Thank you, Chris, Ikram, Julieta, Kate, and all of you. And thanks to all audience. And thanks to me, too, for being me. In search of a balance between living and writing. So here he is, a so-called writer named Putra Hidayatullah. I bear witness, when he sat down to write this piece, he found his mind as blank as paper. He finds the question of how to balance life as an artist easy for him. But the answer is so complicated. Especially when he asks himself, what if his own life is not in balance? Or thicker questions, what is balance? Deep in his heart, he is basically eager to invite the audience into this conversation, seeking their insights to help him uncover a more complete answer. To begin, perhaps, he will share his own part. He is honest in saying that, for him, balancing writing and living is like trying to balance eating and breathing. Both are necessary. Is there any way to separate them? At a quick glance, please forgive him for this sort of simplification. What he understands from today's topic is not far from the balance between stomach and the brain. Everyone knows they are related, like cloud and rain. Stomach is something we need to feel in relatively daily. It needs food and all it contains, nutrition and so on. So does the brain. Back in his hometown of Banda Aceh, Putra remembers well when people used to say that logic requires logistic, which means minds require food. Like here, we have pizza. It's good not only to satisfy hunger, but also for motivation. Every time I imagine a Friday panel discussion, I imagine pieces of pizza waiting for me. And it always magically gives me energy. I wish Friday came every day. In short, it is difficult to think clearly on an empty stomach. But according to Putra Hidayatullah, at least from what he has learned from himself, Humans are complicated. They need more than just what their stomachs demand. He could not agree more with a thinker whose name he forgot, who once said, humans are the only creatures that need justification for their existence. Why do we live? 6 years before he sits in front of you today, Putra found himself flying in the sky. He was not alone. With him were emptiness, sorrow, anxiety, guilt, worthlessness, unending fatigue, and dozens of sleepless nights. The rest were passengers of the same airplane. Hours passed. Unexpectedly, extreme turbulence occurred. Fear flashed in their eyes. While other passengers prayed to stay alive, Putra didn't mind dying. He was tired of life. It was one of those dark days when his mind and soul were chained by ideological power in a society until he decided to leave his hometown of Banda Aceh for the unknown. He spent days and nights on the streets. He moved from one island to another in Indonesia, having intense conversation with his depressed mind. Destiny then led him to a meditation camp at the foot of a great mountain in Java. Many weeks later, he understood what he deeply needed. It was freedom. Has he found it? He still sometimes finds it difficult to stand at the crossroads, especially when facing a dominant narrative and values that he disagrees with. There are times when his mouth is expected to say yes, while his heart says no. Not rarely does he feel tortured, crying inside. He is trapped between the desire to make change and the powerlessness to do so. But writing gives him hope. He is able to write different stories. To sustain life as a writer, he wears many hats. He teaches at university, nurturing young minds, while the art of translation allows him to bridge worlds through language. Curating art brings him close to creation in other forms, as he weaves together stories through the work of others. These roles are not just how he lives, but how he feeds his spirit, so that he may continue to write. In each, he finds echoes of stories that long to be told. Each thus another thread in the fabric of his creative existence. He called this the invention of himself. This gives him the reason to live. He needs later go beyond his stomach. He needs to articulate the melodious stories buried in his heart. He needs to release all the emotional reaction stored inside him by painful realities. There is anger, there is hatred, there is sadness, but there is also love, which he needs to share with other living beings. After sharing all this with you, my brother and sisters, now how would Putra answer the question of how to balance living and writing? What if writing becomes a reason to live? But then, where does the word balance fit in? Should the act of writing be seen as separate from the act of living? Could anyone from this respected audience help him with this? He would love to be your listener. Thank you.
it's my turn, I guess. Okay, so hi everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity, for your kind words, and I really cherish being here, and I appreciate your attention. I think if I put the microphone here, you could maybe hear my heart pounding, but I will do my best. So, okay, I've called this, I want to rest my cheek on the imaginary line that separates art from life. So the playwright says, as a playwright, I live in a crack that is getting smaller every day. The classic Mr. Know-it-all character enters and says, excuse me, just one little disclaimer. How do we know this woman is an artist? Does her way to clean the bathroom differ from mine? We need evidence. Silence. He leaves, slamming the door. The playwright continues. Right now, in my crack, I play, write, and stretch the real to bind it on stage. On the other hand, the virtual universe puts a lot of pressure on the notion of reality, because the digital is swallowing us, and we protect ourselves making a sun visor with our hands, like this. And the gesture lengthens. It is now a shield that tries to protect our body, our art, our life, the theater against the pixel. It's impossible. The essence of drama writing, as it comes to me, it's collective. The physical gesture of typing can be intimate, nor are the fluctuations or details surrounding it. My life fits in the space that I make for my creative self by making the shape of binoculars with my hand. I need to capture images, being shoulder to other bodies, other persons, other ideas while I write. But what is the notion of life and of togetherness? In my writing, I ask what I'd like to know. I write what I'd like to see. I don't want to miss the point. Great scenes, a sense of theater, dialogue, new artistic devices for shared feelings. But the old shapes of the real knock me every minute in my screen. Is that life? How does an artist respond to a real live stream genocide? Where is balance? Where is the connection with the young trans woman pouring my sweet overpriced matcha latte and this wounded child, detached Joe, staring at me? What is the point of the concept great scene while we are bombarded in our feed with Botox, sex, war, kittens, keep scrolling, unboxing, house tours, secret gems, Stanley Cups, election day, gender reveal, scroll, keep scrolling, terrorist attack, eating the cats, eating the dogs, keep scrolling, tailored version, Ozempic body changes, we scroll, doom scrolling, doom scrolling, doom scrolling. The playwright breathes. Balancing art and life is not only not losing the focus, but priorizing the act of listening. Escucha activa, active listening. When I was acting, that was the main task. As an artist, you are not alone in this world. Listening to others is also dramaturgy. Listening to others is a discourse, and it is mine. I am very interested in language, in the use of dramatic writing for this political and painful crack. I believe that theater can transform intimacy just as it does on the internet. Can theatrical language transform reality as social networks do? I want to rest my cheek on the imaginary line that separates art from life. That gesture is a word on stage. Let's keep pushing, fellow women writers, amigas escritoras. In spite of everything, our art is portable, fragile, difficult, political by the mere fact of existing. I don't know what my life as an artist is like. I just know that I cannot stop writing. I can't afford it. I write because salt water flows from my fingertips. Now I think about all that I will type throughout my life. I imagine those words in line, like waiting to get into a pub. My text waiting, peeing, wanting to throw up, wanting to flirt, wanting to leave, asking for a puff, wanting the party to be just as life's promised. La vida no es la fiesta que habíamos imaginado. I don't know what the poem is, but I neither recite it or nor vomit it. I surround it, breathe it, circumcise it, I circumambulate it. I'm alive, and it's enough for me. I'm alive, and I love, and it's enough for me. I'm alive, and I write, and I have language, and I love it, and it's enough for me. I'm alive, and I write, and I have the language, and the imagination, and the pleasure, and the desire, and the body, and I love, and it's enough for me. I'm an artist. I have been alive for 32,000 years, and honestly, nothing is enough for me. Balance, writing drama without losing focus. Balance, being awake, being bold, being uncomfortable. Tomorrow, everything. A partir de mañana, todo. Starting tomorrow, we are going for it all. Thank you.
Hi. Before I begin, first of all, apologies to Ikram, because I sent him a document that was really weirdly formatted and it has 2 columns. But you'll find that there are some quotes interspersed through the text. I'm not going to read the quotes. They would have been on the right column. Also, the last section of my piece is weirdly spaced, which is now more normally spaced in your version, and that's probably for the better. So, sorry. Before I begin, some thanks. Thank you, Christopher, for the introduction earlier. Thank you to the IWP and the Iowa City Book Festival. Thank you all for being here, and to anyone watching online. Indulge me in a little fanboy moment as well. I'm very honored to be on the same panel as Jennifer Croft to my left. The piece I'm going to read was written for a few people that I'm very grateful to have met or to have in my life. So first of all, a minor dedication. These people include my family, of course, as well as writers and artists that have inspired me and been ever so generous to me. So these people are people such as Okamoto Kei, Madison Colvin, Zachariah Amatea, Bryony Collins, Nicholas Wong, Rachel Tan, and Chris Teese. There are, of course, many other people I want to mention, but there are too many of them, or actually, they didn't pay me enough money to talk about them. So, but all my love to these people. I'm going to start with a bit of an anecdote that's not on the thing, and it's thematically relevant, I promise. I know a poet back home in Singapore with whom I share a dream, and the dream is to win the lottery and become lifetime writers who never need to take a job ever again. Having come to Iowa, I want to say to her, I'm figuring out the writer part, not the lottery part, but this goes out to her as well. This is My Two Worlds, and I should mention that it owes a debt to a book with the same title by the late Sergio Schaefer. My Two Worlds. In university, I chose to do an engineering degree, having been guided by years of societal and familial expectation. During my first year, I suddenly developed a rebellious personality and announced that I want to switch tracks to undertake the most subversive and recalcitrant of all degrees instead, which is, of course, literature. My mother and I don't speak for a month, maybe 2. For the first time in his career as a parent, my father finds himself in the role of a mediator. My mother's concerned, terrified even, that her son will never find a job. I, too, am concerned, but I decide that this is the hill that I'll die on. A foolish man with his joke taken too far. I actually finished my engineering degree, but then imprudently decided to pursue advanced degrees in the humanities, a master's degree in literary studies, then a PhD concentrating in film studies. I feel confident of doing well, but there's also a perpetual sense of ennui. In Roberto Bolaño's 2666, a few literary critics enjoy a bohemian lifestyle while on their quest to find the elusive writer Archimboldi. There's a line in there that says something to the effect of critics being writers who couldn't cut it as writers. I think of this constantly as I embark on my PhD, with self-deprecating aspirations to become a film critic. As the old Turner phrase goes, those who can't teach. I don't teach. I don't become a critic. I don't even finish my PhD. Instead, today, I look back at my employment history and think about my failure to fully embrace my interest in literature, the humanities, or a creative life. As I take a low-paying job at a call center, answering inquiries about power bills, I'm working on the craft of fiction. I'm a research assistant in geography and sociology when I'm figuring out the promise of the essay. I'm finding my literary voice as I also find my feet in a nonprofit organization. I write during the weekends. I write deep into the night. I put my money into experimental events and non-viable publishing projects. I try to balance the high cost of living with my impractical creative aspirations. I resist dissenting voices that say it's unrealistic, a profound waste of time. These are my two worlds. I don't have any secrets to share with you. I don't make a living writing. In Singapore, that's rarely possible. I work a day job, or actually I used to work a day job. I left my job before coming here. Job recommendations are welcome. I work a day job and try to fulfill my responsibilities as much as I try to live the life that I want. It's always a struggle. It is for everyone. I save as much money as I can. I apply for as many grants as I find. I celebrate every small success. I squeeze as much time out of my schedule as I can manage. I find that last bit of energy in me to do one more thing. I learn to rely on those around me and in turn, try to become someone others can count on as well. I do my best to keep the writing alive. These are my two worlds. But between my two worlds, there is another truth. As a friendship falters, I meditate on it through writing. When a loved one passes, I write an elegy. Against the senseless disasters of the world, I try to make sense anew. In moments of grief, heartbreak, in the decay and blossoming of friendships, in times of personal crisis and global catastrophes, how do I understand the world? How do I understand myself? For me, writing is a way of being and becoming. It's also a method through which I can hope to be attentive to the other, a person, a community, a side of myself I can barely understand. It's what allows me to resist the everyday that grinds me down, wears me out. After so many years of trying to balance the living with the writing, I think that sometimes it's all right to admit that the writing can be the living in itself. A few weeks ago, discussing my experience in Iowa, a friend of mine said that it sounded as if I had seen a lot of growth in just 3 or 4 weeks. I joked that I had indeed grown, a little fatter, a little poorer, though I secretly agreed with him. Since coming to Iowa, I have met great poets, good people, and the most generous of friends. I've heard voices that inspired writing that I've fallen in love with. Through the process, I have found my feet in a broader picture, realized how my work and ideas can fit into a wider conversation. I came to Iowa with a lot of uncertainty, but I'm beginning to accept that I do, in fact, belong here. I'm starting to find a way of being in the world that suits me. I'm beginning to understand the potency and potential of a prospective artistic life. I am starting to appreciate that I can admit to being a writer. I'm learning that writing can be more than just something I do. That it's okay to say that I am indeed a writer, that this is the way I choose to walk this world, to reach the other, to find a human touch in increasingly difficult times. It's taken me perhaps too long to become comfortable with the notion that, yes, I am a writer. Yes, I choose to be a writer. Yes, I choose to live by being a writer. That is, above all, I'm learning that it's all right to say yes. Suppose every act of writing was personal, every sentence a secret, a perpetual struggle to say the first word and then the second. Suppose I could speak to you, reach you, free of masks. Suppose literature was a possibility, a dialogue between me and my reality, me and my other, me and you. Suppose it was the bridge between my two worlds, or perhaps a middle space that accommodates an in-between to inhabit, from which to listen, to embrace. Suppose a sentence could connect us. Suppose this was a letter, an invitation, a question. I keep writing in search of liveness, living aliveness, the beginnings of conversations, a response. I keep writing in search of you, in search of the interstitial between these two worlds, from which we may begin to speak, in which we can begin to hear each other. An invitation to which you might say, could say, will say, yes, perhaps yes, yes. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I do not have a prepared text, and I just want to say what an incredible luxury it has been to listen to these beautiful works, also spoken in English. We should just recognize what a luxury that in itself is. And yeah, these were so thought-provoking, and I really appreciated them. I think one of the things that interests me the most that pretty much everybody touched on is, as Melanie put it, the idea of active listening. And everyone talked a little bit about the interdependence of being an artist and of working as a writer of any kind. I've been thinking a lot about how to understand even the term art, which for me increasingly connotes the artificial in opposition to nature and the natural. And I've been gravitating more and more toward instead an idea of entertainment, which on the surface sounds like a really provocative thing to say. Entertainment seems like it might be something very superficial, but when you look at the word more carefully and at the way it has evolved, entertainment has this idea inside it of mutual support, mutual holding, and it also carries a reassuring to me idea of brevity, or at least of some temporality. So where some artists strive to make something eternal and achieve some kind of glorious thing that will last in time, I actually think in our current moment of climate crisis, making something that never decomposes is not a good idea. And instead, it's really great to just think about the specific other people that we want to reach in our work. At least that's how I have been approaching it. And it kind of lowers the stakes to a human level, which I think is really helpful for me. Lately, in terms of balance, I've had a lot of changes happening in my life. I gave birth to twins 2.5 years ago, which of course changes one's distribution of time and energy. My pregnancy launched some new autoimmune disorders, which has also kind of dramatically actually changed my abilities. Just this morning, I arrived in Iowa City last night, and just this morning I had to go to the emergency room here at your wonderful hospital because I'm having a delayed allergic reaction to a wasp sting. So, you know, like I literally can't currently even type, and I think that also forces both of those things. So the kind of shutting down of my body and also the presence of these two small beings who are literally depending on me for their very survival. That just forces a different kind of prioritization when it comes to my artistic projects or entertainment projects, which I am thinking of my writing as I mentioned. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of meditate on that a little bit with you all. As Putra was saying, it's going to be very interesting to hear your responses and your questions. And once again, I just want to say thank you to my fellow panelists for everything that you have said.
Thank you one and all for terrific presentations, and especially Jenny Croft, who has made a heroic presentation in being here, though you can't even type at this point. I was also thinking as you were talking, Jenny, that somehow or other you did manage to translate an impossibly long and difficult novel by Olga Tokarczuk, and somehow or other these things are getting done. Now, questions? Ikram, please wait till he comes to you with the microphone. So I guess we have the whole work-life balance sorted out, huh? That means, who knew? Actually, I realized I forgot to, my balance is off. Before you speak, let me quickly tell you about upcoming events, because I won't remember at the end. A full weekend of programming with the Iowa City Book Festival, which can be found at iowacity.literature.org. Several of our residents will be participating in panels hosted at the Senior Center tomorrow, including Sense of Place at 10 a.m., Politics at 1, Who Do You Read at 2:30, and another session on Sense of Place at 4. I will be reading from After the Fact, my collaboration with the late Marvin Bell at 10 in the Masonic Building on College Street. Jenny will be reading from her novel, The Extinction of Verena Ray, at Prairie Lights tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. And finally, join us at Prairie Lights this Sunday at 4 to hear Bethany Kaler from the nonfiction writing program, Chris Tse from New Zealand, Lubia Yakimchuk from Ukraine, to talk about, well, to read their works. Now you can talk, Usha.
So I wanted to start from one of the things that Putra Hidayatullah said about he calls this the invention of himself. So I literally used to manage inventions for the university. And for me, as being a diaspora woman who grew up in India and then came to the US, the management of inventions taught a lot. The birthing of inventions is a totally separate thing than growing up the invention. So there's a lot of nurturing that goes on. I would like to ask you what, and this is for all the writers, who or what are the main factors that nurtured your balance?
What a great question. Yes, please.
Yeah, it's a very good question and also like very difficult to answer. I don't know if I got it correctly. Can you make it say it once again, the questions?
Who or what has helped you nurture your balance?
Okay, great. I think is the way how I see myself. I see myself as an unfinished project. So I don't want, I'm not satisfied with how reality is defined by the society, by the power. So what is true to me is what my body experience. So I feel, and I really like, maybe you're from India, you're familiar with this term, something true is not because of scripture say this is true. Something's true is not because of your leader or something say it is true, but it's just because you experience it is true. So in this process of how I look at myself as an unfinished project, it's full of trial and error. In this process, sometimes society tries to disturb us, like me, for example, with this age, I'm not married yet, and society is so like angry with me, I think, because they're not angry with something social, something political, but they're angry with something personal that doesn't have anything to do with their lives. So I try. It's also like part of the painful part to go through this kind of way of thinking. So I keep going through and trial and error, feel pain, and moving from one place to another, and keep questioning. So mostly questions help me a lot. I teach at university, and I tell to my students, and normally it's been years, intergenerational. It is said every examination, there's always question to answer. But I say, question is more important than answers. I ask them to create questions rather than giving the answers. It's more important. So in part of transforming myself, questions really help a lot, and also misery. Misery. We need that. Sorry. Is like we cannot ban the iron without burning it. Mm-hmm. Right? Also, like diamonds, it's very painful. You have to burn, to cut. It's not easy, but we need that. Like maybe like a metamorphosis before becoming a butterfly. I think that's my answer. I hope it answers your questions. Thank you.
May I add something? That if we weren't miserable, we wouldn't write. Because when you're happy, you're out there living your life, you're minding your children, you're doing all kinds of things, but you're not sitting down and writing. So if you're unhappy, it kind of drives you to create. And I think that's true of all art. Speaking of misery, I've posted my video to my Facebook, which is just my name, if anybody cares to look at it.
Anybody else want to take that on?
Okay, I'll hop in a little bit. Well, the thing that motivates me to find my balance are deadlines and money, but also people. Well, so I'm probably not well placed to answer this question because I'm clearly very bad at finding balance. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to an artist friend in Singapore, and she was like, "Why do you work so hard?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And maybe it's because I'm very inefficient. But I think the thing that motivates me most of all to find that balance is people. And for instance, it's caring about, right now I'm working on a project with younger writers. I care about their work more than I care about my own writing because who cares about my writing? So, but on the other hand, it's also that I don't know, that intrinsic motivation, I think. And it's also just the people around you that you care about. I think it's friendship, it's family, and you're trying your best to make it work. And I think that's unfortunately a very fluffy answer, but I think that's all I've got.
It's chaos for me. It's not balanced at all. For me, it's very chaotic. What are the factors that gave balance? Just in my situation also, I'm doing theater and accepting commissions and doing everything and taking everything and just trying to find the passion and my purpose all the time, my focus, and trying to also share my speaker when I can, and just being very aware that the acceleration process, it's impossible to stop. So just thinking what's the important thing while I'm on the rehearsal, sitting, writing my next commission, and then sleeping a bit, and then it's just, for me, I don't know, it's a millennial thing, it's an opportunity thing, but it's just trying to find focus in the middle of the chaos and taking all the opportunities that I can, and remembering that when some actor is on stage and is doing something that you've written and it creates something, an effect, a conversation, a word, even if only one person just after the play comes to me and tell me one single word, something that happened for me, it worth all the pain. And also, I think it helps a lot to talk about money, actually. It's something that I'm doing in my generation, millennials. I just ask, how much is this? On time, on money, and what do you do when you discover that your male co-workers are being paid more? And how do you discover that something that costed you hours and hours? It's just talking about it. It helped me a lot to share information and not gatekeeping, and trying to find the balance also with this really this solidarity amongst the artists too.
So I have a question here, and this is in a way an extension of what Melanie just said. So you all have presented by default kind of a very romantic notion of what it means to be a writer, where the self expands and fills in all the crevices and takes over and sustains you. But there's a whole other model of approaching literary production, and that is that you get a salary from the state. And there are some countries that do this. EU is much better at this than almost any other part of the world, but not only. How would you feel about the state giving you a salary as a writer?
Where do I sign up?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Art is a public work.
Yeah.
Art is a public work. Art is how we process the world. We don't process the world through looking at it on TV. We don't process the world by doom scrolling. We look at the world critically through art, because if somebody presents a piece of art, and maybe just to reflect on what Jennifer said about art being artifice, right? It is not natural. It is how one person has sort of reconstructed the world, or to use the word from the from Uten's translation last night. Sorry, you all didn't go to that, but anybody who was there, how we reproduce, right? That's how people can understand the world. It's a lens. So yeah, we're doing our public work. We're fixing drains. We're, cutting trees. We're building roads, We should be paid for it. And anyway, sorry. Clearly I have feelings.
It's got to be on a mic. We can't hear.
Yeah, to work, to produce, but also to be present and as everybody else said, to actively listen, and be honest. I think truth, Sorry.
We'll have to make this the last question, so.
All right. I want to talk about mental balance. I'm not talking about doing house chores, taking care of family, or paying the bills. So I write. I've been writing 10 years, and I published something recently. And anytime I'm trying to focus on something else, my mind goes to the story. So I call it hijacking. So it's kind of mental balance, and I go to therapists, and they told me, oh, no, writing is good. There's 3 of them. Writing is good for therapy. But actually, so my problem in balance is when I'm focusing at work or anything else, my mind has the mind of stone. Do you find anything similar, like your mind is hijacked or goes or drift to the story and doesn't focus on something else, or is it just me?
Who wants to take that on?
I would say that happens to me a lot, but it's also, I think, a matter of, as we sort of have spoken about with the other writers, a matter of construction. And so in my writing, I find that I would not have been a writer in a different age, like in a different time. And part of the reason is I live in an age with the word processor, and I live in an age with the internet. and so a lot of my thought processes are basically guided by that kind of, I suppose, hyperlinking sort of thought web. Right? And I've learned over the years to try and manage that with the idea of focus. And so a lot of the times I'm putting things down in my phone, in a notebook, in wherever I can. And even in my own prose writing, I generally write in a lot of short fragments because I don't have a lot of time. And so if I can't get to focus on a particular passage, I'm just putting down ideas and I'm seeing what material I have. It works more like, I would describe it more like sculpture. You collect the material and you're trying to shape it into the text that it wants to be, I guess. So I think it's a process of understanding how to negotiate that sort of distraction and that also sort of what life wants out of you, I think, and to find a way to make the work happen. So that's how I've succeeded at it so far, marginally, I guess. But yeah, thank you.
Anybody else want to add?
Maybe for me is a joy. I love that. So like I love being taken into my story. Sometimes, for instance, when I'm walking, I saw like there is snake chamber on the street, and then it reminds me of my work, and then I combine, oh, it's a new idea. I will put snake chamber into my story. So try to find, or other, I'll transform it into a short story. But our mental world is mystery, you know. Like I don't know, I don't experience yours, and you don't experience mine. Maybe we experience differently, but for me personally, it's a joy. Like I love being trapped into my work because maybe I'm tired of this life, and I need something to escape. Maybe that's how to logically explain it. But yeah, that's how I would say. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Maybe it's also interesting to appreciate that privilege about being obsessed about your stories, because actually I think it's complicated to get back to your plot, to your ideas, to your creative art if your mind is full of mental chores, like I have to do the dishes, I have to answer this message, my mom, my dad, the neighbors. So as you tell it, I embrace it as a privilege in the and having the mental space, because sometimes I really feel it's the other side of it, which is you have your mind completely full of taking care of the other, of your life. Oh, I go to the supermarket, I buy this, and then I have this idea. Oh, I'm a little open note. No, but I have to send you this package. So for me, it's more to trying to protect and still being someone who cares about the others, and also have the little spin of your idea with being a human working a life and being in society. So for me, I would embrace it as a privilege.
And I think we will end on that note of joy, introduced by Putra and exemplified by Melanie. And thank you all for a great presentation.